Not too long ago, advocating for socialist policies meant certain political suicide. But today, socialism is spreading through the halls of Congress as Democrats running for president race to embrace it. For 170 years, socialism in its various forms has been tried around the world, often followed by oppression, poverty, and failure. Experts are closely monitoring this new embrace of socialism.
They do want to turn America, as crazy as it may sound, into a socialist country.
Democrats call it a bold, progressive step.
I am going to go forward with a Medicare for all single-payer program.
So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Let's eliminate all of that.
We need to be bold. One of the reasons why I signed on to the resolution and co-sponsored the resolution for the Green New Deal.
Republicans argue it's completely out of touch.
America was founded on liberty and independence and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free and we will stay free.
And while promises of free stuff like college tuition sound great, for many voters, the devil is in the details. And socialist policy proposals are top issues for the 6 million members of FreedomWorks.
Americans don't support it when they understand who's paying for all this. Middle America isn't socialist. Middle America, they value freedom and individual liberty. These are the things that Americans have always held dear. They're our founding principles.
Webster defines socialism as a system or society in which there's no private property, where the means of production are owned and controlled by the state, a transition between capitalism and communism. Here in Washington, there's a memorial to the victims of communism. The goddess of democracy holds a flame over an inscription to the more than 100 million victims of communism and those who love liberty. Still, this political theory resonates with young people. In its annual survey, the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation found 52% of American millennials prefer to live in a socialist or communist country. 40% prefer capitalism. Although a lot of them aren't sure what it is. The survey also found a quarter of Americans say they never learned about communism in school. Here's what happened when campus reform asked college students about socialism.
It could really benefit our country in the future.
I think it's a good idea.
Socialism as a concept, as a philosophy is good. I think that it's got a bad rep.
How would you view what socialism is, though? Economically, what is socialism?
Economically, So, I'm gonna think about that for a second.
Since property is owned collectively under socialism, Edwards says supporters should get ready to hand over their smartphones and kiss religious freedom goodbye.
The first thing they do is to close down the churches, close them up, and go beyond that, and as a matter of fact, to eliminate, if you will, eradicate, execute priests, pastors, sisters, nuns, people of faith.
The absence of faith is why Joshua Moravchik thinks socialism has been so deadly.
There is no moral law. There's no concept of sin. There's no concept of righteousness. The only righteousness is political.
For Moravchik, loving and losing socialism has been a life journey. He grew up longing for it, serving 5 years as national chairman of the Young People's Socialist League, the same organization counting a young Bernie Sanders as a member. But today, Moravchik warns against it. He's the author of Heaven on Earth, The Rise and Fall of Socialism. And using history as his guide, Moravchik is disappointed to see socialism rising in popularity in the U.S.
I understand why I once believed in it, and I understand why other people once believed in it. But why people would go back to that idea, to me, 200 years, this idea has been tried in every way people could dream up, and it failed in every way.
Ultimately, Moravchik doesn't think America will ever become a socialist nation. But Edwards believes we're seeing the culmination of what Democrats have been striving to achieve for decades.
Whether you're talking about the New Deal, whether you're talking about the Great Society of Lyndon Johnson, whether you're talking about Barack Obama, Obamacare, and what he called bringing about a transformation of America. So they've been working at it for 90 years.
You know, candidates often tell us theirs is the most important election of our time. But in 2020, Americans may get to choose between capitalism and socialism. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
Now, the best definition of socialism is the state owns the means of production. So start imagining a United States where the state owns every automobile company, every telecommunications company. Everything is owned by the state. The state owns the means of production. The problem with that is of basic economics, that if the state owns the means of production, then the primary means now to continue things is to protect the worker. And so instead of efficient allocation of capital into new industry and into worker efficiency, you have an allocation of capital to perpetuate jobs. Now, the common phrase in Russia 20 years ago was, we have full employment. When people would complain about efficiency or the quality of goods, the response always came back, well, we have full employment. The problem with that is that you need to be able to fire people. You need to be able to allocate your capital into new growing businesses as opposed to dying businesses. And when you put all of that in the government, you are guaranteed to have inefficiency. That's the fundamental problem with it. And it always collapses when you run out of other people's money, when there are no longer any new businesses to acquire, more property to acquire, and all you've done is fuel the inefficient allocation of capital. That's the problem. So to hear it come back in America and to still be popular on our college campuses, they're just not teaching the history of what has happened to every single country that has tried these socialist experiments. Just look to Great Britain. Back in the 1950s, when they were coming out of World War II, all the rationing, the tremendous poverty that the war inflicted on that nation, they turned to socialism. And they tried that throughout the 50s, throughout the 60s, throughout the 70s. And then Margaret Thatcher came in and said, we got to get rid of all of this. We have to return the means of production to private enterprise, to free up capital, to have efficient allocation, to create new jobs, create new productivity. Look to Britain if you think it works. Britain is a prime example. It doesn't.